Spoiler, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Yes, you are. You are all of those things and more.
I am, damn it.
Unfortunately, Dave couldn't make it this week, so it's the two of us, but we are excited to talk about this week's movies. Before we get to those, I want to mention that over on our Patreon this week, our Patreon exclusive audio, we're talking about the winner of our recent Best Picture poll. Went and grabbed a smattering of films that won Best Picture, and the winner was the 1971 film The French Connection.
Yowza.
Yowza, indeed. We had a lot of fun discussing this William Friedkin film. And we hope you enjoy the conversation. So if you're a patron, go check that out. And if you're not, consider becoming one. So for $5 a month, you get access to exclusive audio every week where we talk about older films. There's polls you can vote on and lots of good stuff. And I guess I'll take a minute to just shout out our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Always appreciate your support. All right, so this week's movies, we got two of them. First, Megan is going to regale us talking about the film Sometimes I Think About Dying. And then we are going to be talking about Self-Reliance. So, kicking things off with Sometimes I Think About Dying. This is directed by Rachel Lambert. It is written by Stephanie Abel Horowitz, Kevin Armento, Katie Wright Mead, and it's based on the play by Kevin Armento. And it stars Daisy Ridley and Dave Merheje. I think I said his name correctly. So, the one sentence IMDb, and I'm sure Megan will flesh it out more in a second. Oh, there's actually two sentences, believe it or not. Fran, who likes to think about dying, oh, geez, shocker given the title, makes the new guy at work laugh, which leads to dating and more. Now the only thing standing in their way is Fran herself.
See, I mean, this is... If you've listened to the show before, you know I despise and loathe the IMDb descriptions. And for good reason, because either they're poorly written or they're inaccurate. And that's not entirely inaccurate, but I'm just like, oh man, the description from the press release, like from the studio, is so much better.
Well, let's hear it. Let's have dueling descriptions.
No, I mean, that is basically it. But like, it just, I don't know. It just, the way it's framed irks me.
Yeah, it reads kind of annoying.
Yeah. To me, it kind of undermines and undercuts the movie. So I saw this last year at Sundance. Almost exactly a year ago.
Wow.
And it was one that stuck with me because I really like Daisy Ridley as an actor, and I really liked her in this tremendously. And it's a very different role than like Rey in Star Wars and other things I've seen her in. And it's a very, so she plays Fran. It's filmed and set in Oregon. And she plays Fran, who works in an office, and her office mates are very like bubbly and lively, and they're always having chats, and they really get into each other's lives. And Fran is always on the periphery. Like, she's just at her cubicle doing her job. She's very quiet. She's very, very shy. She's very socially awkward. But she just like kind of like observes and listens in, and she's got her routine, and she lives alone, and she microwaves meals, and she likes to do Sudoku, and we get like this kind of rhythm of her life. And she does think about dying, but it's not just dying that she thinks of, although she does, but she also kind of imagines these scenarios where like she's out in the woods, or there's this giant snake that's kind of ominous in an office with her. Or she does imagine herself dying, like kind of shipwrecked on a beach. But the scenes, these kind of surreal scenes of her in the woods or snake in the office, they're very beautifully staged. And she never looks disturbed. Like, it's not like her body is like mangled or bloody. Like, she looks kind of like, it's almost like in a play. Like, she's just kind of like, oh, I died.
Stage
like,
death, yeah.
Yes,
I drank the poison.
Yes, like, ah. it doesn't feel like creepy or like, ugh, what's happening here?
Mhm.
So yeah, but she's very much in her own head, and she's very much kind of her own company. And like we don't get a lot of her backstory, actually almost none of her backstory. And like she's eating alone one day after work, and we see the phone ring, her cell phone, and it's her mom, and she doesn't answer. And we don't know why. So the film kind of doesn't let you in more, but it kind of just it shows very, I think very acutely, it shows how isolated she is and lonely she is. And part of that is, could be just happenstance, but I think part of it is also her because she feels strange. So
Mhm.
she's kind of isolated herself. So yeah, one of her coworkers is leaving because she's retiring and she's going to be going on a cruise. And so everybody's like throwing a party for her, and they have Fran sign the card. And she doesn't know exactly what's happening because she doesn't know things about this coworker's life. So all her coworkers have written like these really nice, like, you're the best, we love you, we're gonna
Mhm.
miss you, kind of these long blurbs. And Fran just writes, happy retirement, Fran. Like, just very curt and to the point. And so this new guy, this new coworker of hers, Robert, takes her old coworker's place, and he's like very loquacious, very friendly, and he like asks her over email for how to order supplies. And they start chatting, and she's very like giving kind of like one word answers, but he keeps like asking, and they kind of have this, and it's very clear from her end that she likes this interaction and she likes their chatting, and it's very sweet. And so he's obsessed with movies, like loves movies. And so they're talking, and he invites her to come to a movie with him at this local theater. And they go, and she thinks that's going to be it. Like she thinks like, oh, they're just going to see a movie and that's it. And then
Mhm.
he's like, oh, do you want to get food? And so then they go out afterwards for food, and it's very sweet and very lovely. And their server, who has waited on Robert before, invites them to a party like the following weekend. And so it's just kind of like this movie is very, very quiet, very kind of slowly unfolding. And it really lets you into Fran's world. And Daisy Ridley is so lovely in this performance. I think she's really great, very empathetic, a lot of pathos with this character. But yeah, but it's very clear. Like the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, oh God, something terrible is going to happen.
Mhm.
Something terrible is going to happen. I'm just kind of waiting. But it's not quite necessarily what you might think.
Mm.
And so they do date very like slowly, and it's very sweet and very tender. And then they go later on in the film, they go to this party, and it's a murder mystery game party, which
Ooh.
is, and it's really cool, and it's kind of different, at least different from anyone I'd seen. And Fran thrives. Like she's really good at it, and she gives this like, I guess when you're the murdered person, and you're role playing, like you have to come up with your murder,
Mhm.
and she comes up with this really elaborate one about poison and like acid in her throat. And she is such a hit that they want her to come back, which is just kind of really lovely. And then later on, she decides to get like donuts for the office, and that's really, and everybody's like, oh, Fran, like, and it's really great. But of course, there is some conflict because she is very she's very inquisitive about Robert, and she asks him a lot of questions.
Mhm.
But whenever he tries to ask her questions, she's like, I'm not interesting. My life's not interesting. There's nothing to tell. And she's very much kind of keeping him and everybody else at arm's length. And then she finally says something just so horrible to him. And she says to him, because he's been married twice, and she's like, oh my God, you're exhausting. No wonder why you don't stay married, or something to that
Oof.
effect. And it's like, yeah, it's
Ow.
so awful and so wounding. And he's like, okay, you need to go home now. And because they're in his car, and she like goes home, and she like screams like this wail, and she's like crying because she feels so bad and so guilty, and it's just awful. And she like lays on the floor of her home for like the entire weekend because she just feels so bad. But then at the end they reconcile it, but it's like this really sweet, tender way where she says to him, she's like, do you wish you could unknow me? And she's like crying, and it's just, oh, it's so sad. It's so lovely. And he's like, well, I don't really know you. And it's like very clear, like he doesn't, that, he wants to, and she like is letting him in, and she tells him, some vulnerable things about herself. But it's this very lovely movie that's a very quiet kind of, I don't want to say it's a different movie, but kind of, because there's not a lot of plot. There's not a lot that happens, narratively, but emotionally there's a lot. And I loved Daisy Ridley as Fran. I loved her office coworkers. They're all great. A lot of them are familiar comedians that I've kind of seen in bit parts before. So yeah, so I just think it's a really, really lovely film, and it really digs into isolation and loneliness and awkwardness and how you find your place. And yeah, so I really enjoyed revisiting it.
Oh, it sounds good. You certainly spoiler pieced me into wanting to see it.
Oh, good. I thought you might not, because it's really it's a slower movie.
I mean,
but the nice thing is it is only 90 minutes.
I was just noting that actually. I thought, oh, it is at
Yes.
least just an hour and a half. So even a slow
Yes.
hour and a half is still an hour and a half. I feel like I can appreciate the kind of like indie dramedy. I feel like that's a genre I've spent a fair bit of time watching. I think that's because I like used to cover the independent film festival in Boston, and so I feel like I ended up
Yes.
seeing a lot of movies that are like kind of like of this ilk. And I
Yes.
certainly appreciate
Yeah.
them like for being kind of like offbeat and silly, but sometimes a little bit serious. So I feel like I could get on board with this.
Yeah, it's funny. This is, I mean, it sounds like it would be silly because of some of the surrealist elements, but it's more grounded, and it's not really like, it's more like a dark comedy rather than like silly comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But it just has a sweetness to it that I really appreciated, and just like I thought was just really delightful. And it's like it really focuses on kind of these small moments that aren't really small, and these small interactions that again are not really small, but in another narrative might kind of dismiss them. And I appreciated that. Which, yes, you get to see more of in indie films.
Yeah, they're like, we don't have the budget for the big stuff, so like let's make it about the emotions and the
Yes.
characters and the conversations with some,
Exactly.
some special effects thrown in there here and there.
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of love is that when Robert starts at the office, the boss of the place is like, "Oh, let's all go around the rooms and say our name and say what our favorite food is." So everybody's like saying their favorite food.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets to Fran, she's like, "I love cottage cheese." And which is kind of a funny answer.
It is.
But one of the ways that Robert connects with her is he's like messaging her, and he's like, "I love cottage cheese too. It's one of my favorite of the 5 cheeses or something. It's like a top 5 favorite cheese." And she's like, "Actually, it's not a cheese. It's a curd. I Googled it." It's just like, but I love that. I'm like, yeah, cottage cheese. All right.
It's certainly a unique choice. It's definitely a divisive food, I would say.
Definitely.
Most people love it or they hate it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, sometimes I think about dying sounds good. I think I'm gonna check it out.
Oh, yay! Well, I hope you like it, because I really did.
Anything else you wanted to mention about the movie?
No, just
Okay.
really lovely watch.
Sweet. Is that in theaters or where can people see that?
Oh, yes, I believe it is in theaters.
Looks like it on IMDb. I don't know if where it's gonna land on streaming, but looks like it's in theaters.
Yes, it opens in New York and LA January 26th, and then it opens in San Francisco, Boston, Portland, DC on February 2nd. So hopefully it will open in more theaters or be on streaming after February 2nd.
All right, sweet. So then let's move on to our second movie, Self-Reliance, which is written, directed, and starring Jake Johnson, wearing a lot of hats in this one.
He's wearing a lot of hats.
It also has Anna Kendrick, has Andy Samberg playing himself.
Yep.
And a lot of other people I feel like you've seen in other things, like Natalie Morales is in it. She plays his ex. And then I feel like I recognize a lot of like the character actors, like Emily Hampshire plays his sister, right? And then Mary Holland plays his other sister.
Yep.
So, we'll give the old one sentence IMDb and flesh it out from there. So, Given the opportunity to participate in a life or death reality game show, one man discovers there's a lot to live for. Aw, that's such a cutesy description of this movie.
It tells you like almost nothing
Yeah, it
about the
tells you
movie.
almost nothing. But to expand out, Jake Johnson's playing a down on his luck kind of guy. His ex broke up with him. She's got a baby now. He is back living with his mom. He has a kind of shitty job that he's just kind of going through the motions. And one day, Andy Samberg pulls up in a limo and asks if he wants to get in. So he does. And then he's, asked if he wants to go on an adventure. And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? I don't have anything going on. And so he gets dropped off at this warehouse where there's these like weird guys there who tell him he can be on this dark web reality TV show. And the premise is that people will be showing up trying to murder him. And if he can stay alive for a full month, then he will win $1 million. And the loophole or the catch, one of the things about it is that if he's with someone else, they can't kill him. So the killers can't, like shoot at him and risk hitting someone else. So he quickly decides, well, as long as I have somebody with me the whole time, then I'll just be fine and I'll be able to ride out this month. And so he starts by asking his family to stay with him all the time. They think he's nuts and say no. Then he hires a guy. He meets this guy who he hires, who he calls James, and later find out his name is not James. It's like Walter, I think.
Yes.
So he befriends this guy, James, and this, goofball interaction where, James is following him around everywhere, including to work, which gets him fired from his job. And then he meets Anna Kendrick, who he takes out like an ad, I think, on Craigslist, and she replies and says she's also playing the game. So they try to make a pact to stay together and ride out their time. And what else? What am I forgetting? It turns out she's not actually playing the game. She was just bored and looking for something to do. And then what else, Megan? What am I forgetting here?
I don't know if you are forgetting anything. I mean, his family doesn't believe him and they have like an intervention with him because they think he's either seeking attention or is having like a mental health breakdown.
That's true. Yep. Oh, and the production assistants who are referred
the ninjas.
to as the production ninjas. They're the people sneaking around planning the cameras supposedly for this. They actually show up like in his bedroom, hovering over him, saying things like, "Oh, we're really rooting for you. We want to make sure like you, so just like keep doing what you're doing. Good job, guy."
Yeah.
They show up to kind of like guide him along the way, and he does make it through. He does survive. He does win the $1 million. Although he does have to run from at least 2 to 3 people that are chasing him through the warehouse trying to kill him before he reaches the end. And then he finds out that the $1 million is not in American currency. What was it in kroner? Was that what he was getting paid in?
Yeah, it's Icelandic or Greenland. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, I think, yeah.
So he wins 1 million kroner and he is getting paid in installments. And that's kind of like the movie ends with kind of he's explaining all of this to his family, who still seems kind of incredulous, even though Wayne Brady is sitting there next to him, because Wayne Brady, there's a joke earlier in the movie about Wayne Brady being involved somehow. And then the movie kind of like ends with him going to knock on Anna Kendrick's door and to try to talk to her because they kind of had like a falling out somewhere in the middle of this.
Yes.
So I think that's all the plot points. Megan, what did you think of this movie? Not a fan, huh?
No, and it really makes me sad to say that because I love Jake Johnson. Love him. Love, love, love. I adore him. I adored him when he was Nick Miller on New Girl. I still often refer to him as Nick Miller rather than Jake Johnson. And I think he's a fantastic voice actor. Love him in the Spider-Man movies. I think he's just a delight. And I think he's incredibly versatile and really talented. So I was really excited. And I think this is a great premise. And I think this has strengths. I think Jake Johnson is good in this.
Yes.
I somewhat liked the rapport between him and Anna Kendrick. I think it kind of, for me, kind of remains a little surface level. But
I agree with that.
There's something Yeah, there's something there though. I wish it had kind of delved deeper, but there is something there. They don't like repel each other or anything,
No.
chemistry wise.
Hmm.
I really liked his friendship with James slash Walter.
Yeah, that was
Like
really
a
charming.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really liked that a lot. Um, yeah, I think for me, where this lost me is that the cameos kind of took me out of it. Like the celebrity cameos, like Andy Samberg. And I know why Andy Samberg is there. I know his production company produced it. So I
Hmm.
get why he's there. But then also in the Wayne Brady cameo, like it is kind of a funny callback. But like, and then we have Christopher Lloyd, who is not playing Christopher Lloyd, but he's playing his dad.
Yes.
And Christopher Lloyd is great. I always love seeing him, even in a small role. But yeah, that for some reason those kind of took me out. The style of humor kind of took me out. It This felt disjointed to me. This felt like it was the start of something, but never really got going. And I guess, and part of this is on me that when I read the premise, I kind of thought it was going to be a little more action packed,
Mm.
and it's not. And not that that's a bad thing by
Yeah.
any means, but if you're not going to have action, I need more dialogue or more character development, or even with the action, I want character development.
Right. Hmm.
And for me, there's kind of just not any depth to it. It's just considering how much time we spend with this character and how he's really, struggling and flailing, and he keeps showing up at his ex's house but not knocking on the door because he's too scared to, confront her and ask why she broke up with him. And obviously there's growth, but like he even says he's like, I've grown, like he's like shouting it out. He's like, I've grown, I've learned so much, I want to live now. And it just feels a little too on the
Yeah.
nose.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think this has, like I said, I think this is a good premise, and I think it's interesting that in a Vulture article, Jake Johnson said that when he was writing this, he thought of this as like Bottle Rocket meets Jacob's Ladder, which I think is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Because those two films are not the films I thought of. I thought of this as kind of like The Running Man meets David Fincher's The Game, but not nearly as riveting or interesting as those two.
Hmm.
But yeah, so for me, this unfortunately fell flat, but I do still love Jake Johnson. And, kudos to him for putting out his own film and his directorial debut. But yeah, to me, I needed more from this. I wanted more oomph, more depth, more something.
I hear you. I think I liked this more. I didn't love this. I think a lot of its strength is in Jake Johnson in the lead and him being just so charming that I did
Yes,
find
definitely.
myself laughing during this, which is not common for me in comedies of late. I don't laugh a lot. I do feel like I laughed a few times in this. And I found it really charming. I found his relationship with James slash Walter very charming. I think because of how
Yes.
earnestly he treated James as a friend
Yes.
first and an
Yes.
employee second.
100%.
Because I feel like it could be so easy to just like make jokes like, oh, you just found some guy in the street, some, uh, homeless guy, like he just, hired him, and we can make lots of jokes about that. But it's really just, no, it
Hmm.
comes from a place of earnestness and liking the guy and asking for his advice and treating him as an
Yep.
equal and not as somebody who he just hired and is giving money to. So I think that relationship worked for that reason for me. Um, Anna Kendrick, I feel like you're right. There's a rapport here. It's not a great one. I think they honestly have
No.
a stronger rapport in Drinking Buddies than they do in this movie.
Oh.
Taking it back to Joe Swanberg, one of Dave's favorite filmmakers. But yeah, I just didn't feel like the connection was quite as strong here. And I think some of that may have to do with Anna Kendrick's performance. It
I
felt
think
kind of
so.
weak here. I don't know if it was just bad direction from Jake Johnson or the character wasn't written well enough to really latch onto. But I agree with
Hmm.
you in ways that it feels kind of shallow. And it did seem like it was going to be more action packed. I think based on the premise of the movie, I thought this is going to be kind of like it's Jake Johnson, so it's going to be like a madcap comedy about this guy,
Yes.
dodging assassins and somehow
Yes.
making it to the end, not exploiting a loophole so that he's basically in almost no danger the entire time,
Right.
and we're just kind of like riding it out with him.
Yeah. Which again, I'm not like obviously that's the premise. That's part of the
Right.
premise, but like I feel like that's like the whole thing. Like I feel like if it was just part of it, but to
Mm-hmm.
have it be the whole thing. And like we literally are getting a countdown like day 1, day 2, like day 5, day 16 and it's like, "Oh my god, we're still not there yet."
Yeah, it does get a little bit tedious in that way, which is not great for an hour and 25-minute movie to feel tedious in places.
No. This movie should move. It should hustle.
It should hustle. So I agree. It is a little bit disappointing, I think, because there was an opportunity to make something that was really had some oomph to it.
Yes.
So that was a bummer, but I
But
but I did like it though. Like I found it
mhm,
charming, and I really like Jake Johnson, and I think this was a good first effort. I would like to see him do something else and see if he could
mhm,
maybe kind of dial it up for movie number 2.
mhm. I will say that I definitely something I was thinking about when you were saying that or when you were talking about this, I also really like that Walter is not used for comedic purposes in the sense of he's not the butt of the jokes.
Right.
Like he's not being made fun of. And nor are homeless people because there are scenes where Jake Johnson's character is because Walter's gone. He doesn't know where Walter's gone to, but then later we find out they like paid Walter to go to like a motel so he wouldn't be around because it was too boring to the audience apparently.
Mhm.
And Anna Kendrick's not around. She's kind of dipped out, but yeah, so he needs somebody to be around, and so he's hanging out at this community of on the street with homeless people. And again, at no point are they the butt of jokes. They're not, being made fun of. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate that, especially because I despise and loathe mean humor, and I especially despise it when it's, mocking marginalized communities.
Yeah.
And so I really, really appreciate that is not doing that. And you're right. I think a big part of what works about this movie is Jake Johnson's charisma and his earnestness. And that goes a long way. I think without those things, I would not have liked this at all.
Yeah.
But because of him and because of those two things, it at least worked a
To a
smidge for me.
degree. Yes.
Yeah, not much, but a smidge.
Yeah. It is nice that it's not punching down because it's
Yes.
really frustrating when you see comedy like that. Like, come on, we can do better. We don't
Yeah,
need to just make fun of marginalized people and punch down on them.
exactly.
Yeah. Just trying to think what else. I mean, like, it feels like there's not a lot to say, I guess, but also it's not a long movie.
Yeah. I will say, I think it's really interesting that both films that we covered this week both have to do with loneliness and
Mm,
people who have isolated themselves and people who are really scared to reach out to people. And in each of these films, there really is a message of, put yourself out there, take a chance, get to know people. And I think what's funny about this movie is that Jake Johnson wrote it during COVID, which I don't know if this was his intention or it just kind of happened that way, but especially, after the onset of COVID, so many of us look at interactions differently and things still feel weird
mhm.
and we were all isolated for so long and some of us are still isolated in many ways. So, I think it's interesting that these two films are both dealing with loneliness and isolation and how that impacts people and how you kind of navigate that and try to make connections with people.
That is a really interesting thing that I hadn't considered, a through line between this week's movies. So,
Oh.
great point.
Thank you. Well, to be fair, you didn't see the first one, so.
Well, that's true. I didn't have the benefit of seeing both movies, but one thing I forgot to mention about this movie is that I really liked the score. I thought it had this like eerie, discordant quality to it that I found really
Yes.
interesting and I
It was
really
very
dug.
unnerving.
Yeah,
I think that was the other reason I kept expecting more to happen because it was so
yeah.
unnerving.
The score definitely was making you think that it was gonna really ratchet it up, and then instead we're Jake Johnson sees some guy outside and he runs and busts through the bathroom and He's like tackles his brother-in-law in the toilet, which I
Oh
thought
my
was really silly and like, oh my god, that's so embarrassing and awkward and just
Yeah, I'm not here for bathroom humor, so that was really like, oh, but it was more tasteful than it could have been. So
Mhm.
there's that.
The scene before that I thought was fairly funny, where him and the brother-in-law were sitting on the couch, and the brother-in-law is like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to bed soon," and then he's like, "Okay, yeah, when are we gonna go to bed?" And the guy's like, "You're not sleeping in
Oh,
the same bed as me," and then
and he's like, yes, I
it
am.
cuts
Yes,
to
I
them
am.
laying side by side in the bed together.
Yeah, well, he can't be alone.
Yeah, but I
or
liked,
the assassins will get him.
yeah, of course, but I love that between that scene there was some conversation where he somehow convinced him to climb into bed together.
I know. It seems like he just wore him down.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's a lot of shades of Nick Miller from New Girl in this character.
Mhm. Which is kind of funny to me because I liked New Girl, but I didn't love New Girl, and I feel like I didn't love Nick Miller all the time because I felt like he was just like, sometimes I'm like, okay, come on, like it's like it would just go to
I
like
love
the
him so much.
extremes of the character, you know. I feel like
I
maybe
know, I
I'm doing
just
a
love
terrible
him.
job of describing it, but I feel like his like weirdness reached peaks that I was like, okay, come on.
I mean, listen, yeah, New Girl was had a lot of problems. It was a wildly problematic show,
Mhm.
and there were many things I'm like, what the fuck? Why did you do that? A lot of fat phobia, gestating what turned out to be her cousin. Like, I'm like, choices, what is happening?
Mhm.
But Nick Miller was class act. For me anyway.
Fair enough. What else? Anything else about this movie you want some to talk about?
I was glad to see Mary Holland and Emily Hampshire too, but yeah, especially because Mary Holland, because she's so good in the arm wrestling movie, which now I can
Yeah,
of course
Golden
think
Arm.
of.
Love that movie.
Yes, Golden Arm, and oh my god, what is going on with me that I can't think of titles? The lesbian holiday rom
Oh,
com.
Happiest
That's
Season.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't think of titles. But yeah, but she's such a delight in both of those films. So it was really nice to see her here. I wish she kind of got a little more screen time. Same with Natalie Morales. I'm always excited to see her. She's always so great. But yeah, still glad. You know what I wonder? I'm thinking now, and I am wondering if it was because they did Drinking Buddies, which I completely forgot about. But I wonder how the film would have played if Anna Kendrick had been the ex and Natalie Morales had been the person answering the
Mm.
ad who was spending time with him. I feel like that might have worked better, but that I could be biased because I like Natalie Morales so much. But
No, I think I agree with you. I mean, I
oh yay.
like Natalie Morales a lot too, but I think that would have been more interesting casting because I think maybe Anna Kendrick could have pulled off the like bitter ex slash like frustrated ex energy, and I feel like Natalie Morales could be the like fun, the fun loving roll with the punches kind of, you know, goofy companion character.
Yeah, well, I feel like because I don't know, I feel like Anna Kendrick is really would have been good in a cameo, would have been good in a really small part. Like she kind of would have made a big impact. But yeah, but in the role that she has here, yeah, I just feel like it's as we've said, it's just not written well enough. It's not there's not
Hmm.
enough there to dig into. And I don't know. I feel like maybe Natalie Morales would have, even if it was the same exact screenplay, maybe sometimes some actors can do more, with less. So I don't know. Just a thought, but
Yeah, that I would have been on board with that change.
yeah, but I will say that even though this didn't work for me and I was kind of ready to take a nap
Hmm.
while I was watching, I will say it didn't put me off of Jake Johnson at all. And much like you, I am curious what he does as far as either screenwriting or directing going forward.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see whatever the next thing he's got going on.
Hmm. Were there any other parts that you really liked or any other? Because I know you said you were laughing throughout or
Yeah, I'm
laughing
sure.
out loud
I
at
mean,
certain
like
parts.
it was. I think for me, it was like just the silly stuff, like getting the brother-in-law to coercing him to sleep next to him in bed, and like uh, the Ellen DeGeneres impersonator assassin
Oh
that
my
knocked out
God.
his tooth. I thought that was actually really funny. Um, I mean, I love that Wayne Brady showed up in this. I love that Wayne Brady actually has a good sense of humor about himself.
That is true. That
Like,
is
he's
true.
okay making fun of himself. I'm loath to bring up the name Dave Chappelle, but I remember back in the Chappelle show days that there was a very funny sketch where Wayne Brady hung out with Dave Chappelle and scared him because he was so live wire and just like bonkers. So appreciate that Wayne Brady has a good sense of humor. Although I wish he was maybe in this slightly more than just one scene where he's just kind of sitting there on the couch next to Jake Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because he's so good at like improv and
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of surprising.
Yeah, like imagine if you showed up as one of the assassins. Like I would have loved to see more
Ooh.
characters in cameos. Like Wayne Brady is an assassin, Anna Kendrick, like to your point, if she showed up as like an assassin or something, I think that could have
Yes.
been really interesting.
Yes. Now we're cooking with gas. Yes. That would have been great.
Yep.
Yeah, that would have been great. Completely agree.
Well, there we go. Should have taken some script notes from us.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because definitely agree with that. What did you think? I've been wanting to ask you this. What did you think of because I know you mentioned it, but what did you think of the ending where it just, cuts at him knocking on Anna Kendrick's door?
I'm fine with it. I mean, it
Oh, okay.
kind of felt appropriate given that like he had such a hard time knocking on Natalie Morales' door that of course he's going to be like, okay, I'm going to go here a bunch of times and like try to knock on the door, but not. And then, I mean, I basically assumed that he did knock on the door at the end of it. But what did you
Yeah.
think?
No, I did too. I was just, as soon as it happened, I was like, "Ooh, is this enough just to know that he's going to knock on the door?" Because he kind of was so passive in his life and just really let life pass him by, and he's going to take action now and take charge and be assertive. Is that enough, or do we need to see their reconciliation? I don't know. I was like it. I was thinking about it. Was ruminating. Where I'm just like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it would have been better, or if it was needed or not. But
I kind of like that we
to the
didn't.
film's credit, I was curious.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that it didn't. I feel like you made a comment before about he says something like, I've grown, I've changed. But I mean,
Yes.
for him, I think he's grown and changed a medium amount. So maybe it's appropriate that we don't see that moment. We see him so kind of reverting back to I'm going to nervously attempt to knock on the door and maybe I'll nail it this time. And we don't see whatever the next conversation is.
That's fair. That's a good point.
All right. Let's see. Anything else? No, I feel like I did. I think I mentioned everything now.
Yeah, I think I have too.
All right. So to recap, Megan, you would recommend Sometimes I Think About Dying, which is currently in theaters and limited release and going wider in early February to mid-February. And Self-Reliance is currently available on Hulu. You can watch it right there on Hulu. What do you think? Would you recommend it or no?
I would not. I mean, I think there are better ways to spend your time. I think there's better movies that this entire cast are in, but your mileage may vary. I don't think it's the worst way to spend an hour and a half, but yeah,
Certainly not.
but I would say there's better movies out there. So for me, I would say skip it.
I lean more towards C, but it's definitely more of a tepid C than like enthusiastic endorsement.
I hear you. I know. I feel bad. I feel bad saying skip.
Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes it's like when you watch indie movies and stuff, you're like, oh, all right. I wish I liked this more. Then I feel bad saying don't see it because then it's like, well, then is that person going to get another shot to make another movie because this movie tanked?
Very true. Very, very true. Yeah.
It's a dilemma.
Mm-hmm. And who knows? Maybe other people like it much more than we did.
That's true. The new girl.
Or I should say me, because you did like
it. The new girl fans out there might really be clamoring for this one.
I need more Jake Johnson content. We need more Nick Miller.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound great week after week.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find us anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also find us over at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can head over there and check out the merch tab, which will take you to our TeePublic store. You can get all kinds of cool Spoiler Piece stuff, from t-shirts, hoodies, notebooks, pillows, all kinds of fun stuff. So definitely check that out. You can also find us on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and I think we're on Threads. Not on Blue Sky just yet.
No.
There's so many out there. It's just difficult to keep up with
So
them
many.
all. But yeah, you can get in touch with us any of those places. But you can also send us an email at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
You can leave us a voicemail. You can even send us a text. I know, which is weird. You can text us at that number. You can tell us what you thought of Sometimes I Think About Dying, or Self-Reliance. And yeah, let us know. We'd love to hear. Or even maybe if you want to talk to us about the Patreon film this week. If you're a patron and you happen to listen to the episode, you want to talk about it, you can hit us up in any of those places. Also, there's a cool feature now where you can like chat on Patreon, I guess. Like you can send messages to people. So I think that's something you can do if that's interesting, patrons listening. Which is a very long-winded way of saying if you really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. You can listen to exclusive audio each week for $5 a month, like this week's, where we talk about the winner of our poll, which was the 1971 film French Connection. And yeah, if you like the show but can't quite make it to the Patreon, you can also give us a rating and review. We'd very much appreciate. You just go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that will take you to your platform of choice. So I think I finally got all of the stuff that I was supposed to do. So my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and other places like Threads and Blue Sky as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Galaga. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Opinioness World, or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinioness.
We'll see you next week.
Bye!